Hello, I'm Femi OK and you're in the stream. Today, it's the most dangerous place in the world for environmentalists. Well, that's according to the UN. We discuss why green activists in Latin America experience more violence than anywhere else. Our digital producer Malika Bilal is here looking out for your live feedback. I know you've got some good tweets. Can you give us a preview?
I can give you a tiny little peek into what people are saying.
Right.
This kind of sums up what several people have mentioned to us. This is a Facebook post from Christina who says, "This is simple. There's money in anti-environmental business and activists are in the way of that money." And of course, we want to hear what all of you at home think. So tweet us your questions and your comments as the conversation goes on. Just make sure you use the hashtag AJStream.
Hi, I'm Henry Gribby, Campaigns Manager at FreedomWorks, and I am in the stream.
In Latin America, environmental activism is becoming an increasingly dangerous line of work. A Global Witness report published last year says of the 711 environmentalists killed around the world in the last decade, 592 were in Latin America. Since 1996, in the Amazon region alone, more than a dozen activists are killed each year. Most tend to be locals and indigenous leaders from small communities in remote rural areas. And in recent months, a Spanish biologist in Brazil, an environmentalist in Costa Rica, a campaigner against the construction of a hydroelectric dam in western Mexico, and an indigenous leader in Peru's Amazon region have all been murdered. And while many are sympathetic, critics do point to a change in campaigning methods used by green activists. They say they've become increasingly radical. So, as the competition between environmental sustainability and economic gain continues to cause violence, we ask, what will it take for it to stop? To help us talk about this, we're joined by Jorge Chapas. He's the Executive Director of the environmental think tank Red Rana. Felipe Milanes is a political ecologist who writes about the environment, social conflicts and indigenous issues. Esteban Gonzalez is from the Libertarian Movement of Mexico, and Vanessa Lozano is from the Costa Rica Wildlife Sanctuary. It's great to have all of you here in the stream. Felipe, not many of us have had death threats because of the work that we do, and this happens to you and your colleagues. Can you explain how it happens and what it's like?
It's a terrible situation, Femi. Actually, being a journalist or a researcher, sometimes we feel that we are protected from being threatened. But the thing is that our sources, our friends that are living in those conflict zones, they are threatened, they are killed. What happened to Zé Claudio and Maria, that we just saw the image of their funeral 2 years ago in the Amazon. That's the other side of the economic rise on Latin America, the violence that's coming together with it.
So I'm looking at a Global Witness pie chart, a breakdown. We mentioned this in the introduction. So these are reported killings from 2002 to 2011 in Latin America. This orangey brown color here, all the Brazilian killings. This orange color here, Colombia. The salmon pink is Peru. And then we've got other little numbers of different killings and incidents from various different countries in Latin America. So I'm just really curious, what is going on that in Latin America, Felipe, it's so dangerous to be an activist or an environmentalist? Is there something that's linking all of these incidents, all of these killings around the region?
What is really bad is that it's not a new thing, actually. It has been dangerous for environmentalists in Latin America since, in the Amazon, at least since the 80s. Why is this process continuing to be so violent, and why is now still violence going on there, even with the economic rise? I would put things together. This new economic boom in Latin America based on the export of raw materials, big infrastructure project, has a big clash. It's against the local population who are suffering the impact of this developmentalist ideology going on there.
Okay.
Well, Vanessa, I want to bring you in here. There's a Facebook comment here from Lawrence who says, communities can be involved in a struggle to protect their lands. That's, of course, very threatening for people who have economic interests on mega projects. Governments, too, are often part of the problem. But I want you to pick up here on what Lawrence said about communities being threatening for people who have economic interests otherwise. Now, you are fighting for turtles in your homeland. That's not necessarily an economic interest, but can you tell us about what you're facing?
It's difficult for us. We have a lot of new projects that are coming to the area.
Okay, we're going to come back to you, Vanessa. We've got some feedback and we're hearing you again, and we've got some echo. That all can be fixed, so we'll come back to you in just a moment. Jorge Chapas, what I like about the work that you're doing is that you're trying to balance environmentalists. Yeah, we can hear you. We'll come back to you in just a moment there. Jorge, you're trying to balance the environment with the idea that the development also can take place at the same time. So when you see this story about the number of deaths that the UN has published, what's your reaction?
Yeah, definitely. As my colleague Ian in Brazil said, it's terrible. No? You know, there are human lives, definitely, but I think that there is a common scenario in Latin America, and that's the tradition inherited of Spain of conceived the natural resources as a public goods. And when in these countries of Latin America exist public goods, this kind of natural resources are from anybody, you know. So we are in front of the opinions of a lot of people, from the president to the priest, and definitely this kind of threats, kidnappings, roadblocks. For example, here in Guatemala is very common. It's because the natural resources are not in private owners, I think.
Okay, that's interesting. Let's go back to Vanessa. Vanessa, I'm on your webpage, Costa Rica Wildlife Sanctuary. It's so cute. We've got little critters here, we've got turtles here, and yet you've been held at gunpoint, and also one of your colleagues was murdered as well. What is going on with your sanctuary in Costa Rica that is so threatening that your life is at risk?
Well, we are located in the area of Limón, and the culture has been always that people eat turtle eggs and turtle meat. So to fight this against a community that it's not really, you know, trying to find new ways, we have approached them, and half of them want to work with us and they want to see a future, but half of them will just prefer for big companies to come and develop, and this is their way for easier and faster money. That is what's going on. Besides, the area has been you know, there's a bunch of drug dealers in the area that have made it very, very difficult for us to work.
So Vanessa, tell us how difficult, because we really want to live a little bit through your eyes and what you're doing and how dangerous it is. How are they making it difficult for you?
Well, how it started was really what we just got patrolling down the beach, and we would be usually put barricades so that we could not continue the patrol. And during these barricades, one of our major fears was that we would be attacked by the poachers. We had a number of times where I was chased with a machete back to my car to leave. I got once volunteers were actually held at gunpoint and tied up while they stole all of our turtle eggs that we were trying to save. This is because you have to understand one thing, Costa Rica, although it is illegal in the area of Limón, it continues to happen, and one turtle egg can be worth up to $1. So I'm saying a poacher in the area of Limón can make up to $300 a night stealing turtle eggs. So it becomes an amount of money that, of course, they don't want to, you know, work for less, and it becomes really, really difficult for us to make them understand that the turtle is an endangered animal, that it's not part of a culture. Just because you don't eat turtle eggs or turtle meat doesn't mean culture will end.
Okay, thanks, Vanessa.
Well, Vanessa mentioned money as being one of the major factors. There's a video comment here. Esteban, I'd like you to have a listen to this and let me know what you think.
Well, I think the rise in violence against environmental activists in Latin America has to do with the fact that governments that used to have a left approach to economy suddenly realized they need millions and millions of dollars only to pay the salary of the bureaucracy they have created. This kind of model needs all the natural resources at their disposal, and they're willing to step over nature and environmental activists to achieve their objective.
So Esteban, that goes in line with that earlier Facebook comment I read at the top of the show, with people saying the common thread through all of this is money.
Well, yes, of course. I think that it's all about money. I mean, we were talking about later about eggs and people eating eggs, and we kind of take it and blame it on the culture. But the thing is that we have two groups of different people, one that want to eat eggs and eat turtles, and others that want to preserve it and want to have them. So in the end, this is a resource conflict, and it's worsened by the state, as the video comments, because over the last century it has claimed property over all these resources, and maybe because of the mistakes of environmental activists, that's their claim, and that's their claim to the government is to protect and to take that as a national resource, or to take that as a national refugee, or to make something illegal. And that doesn't solve the problem. I think that making things illegal doesn't solve the problem. Claiming national territories or impeding developments from taking place just because it's not the solution, as the person from Guatemala that joined us from the RAN, I think that the problem is related to property rights and the enforcement of property
So
rights.
Esteban, what do you mean exactly by mistakes that environmentalists or activists are making? Because we have two on our program. I'd be interested to hear their thoughts about that. But what do you mean by mistakes exactly?
I don't know. For example, here in Mexico, there is this big case of mines near Huiricuta, which is a sacred place, and this place was property of somebody some years ago, but activists made the government to take it into its hands, and then the government made concessions, and they don't like that. But now they cannot complain because they asked the government to take care of that, and now the government decides to take care of that in that way. And they are not. I mean, it's in the same argument that give powers to the state and that get things worse.
So Felipe, do you take that point of view that it's possible that environmentalist activists around Latin America, for all the various different causes that they're fighting for and that you are fighting for, that maybe it's your approach that actually is getting you killed?
I wanted to jump in exactly in this point, Femi. Actually, who are the environmentalists in Latin America? I'm sure they are completely different from the international environmentalists that we see in big conferences on climate change. They are the popular environmentalists. These are poor people struggling for their life. That's what Joan Martinez Allier, an economic researcher from Barcelona, he calls them the environmentalism of the poor. Those are the environmentalists in Latin America that are being killed. The Spanish biologist that was assassinated in Rio, that was a total exception in Brazil, actually. He was from a middle class in a big city. That's not what happened all the time. This year, 22 people were assassinated in Brazil, and they are poor farmers struggling for land rights, and or they are seen as an obstacle of big infrastructure projects. Those are the environmentalists that are being killed in Latin America, the popular ones, the poor people.
Esteban?
No, Femi, I maybe was misunderstood, because I never said that their methods were getting them killed. I said that these particular methods are not helping environmentalists to get to their ends and to manage or to achieve more safe environment, and greener and cleaner environment. Sure. But my explanation to why they are being killed is because lots of people are being killed. And here in Mexico, if you see the numbers of ambientalist activism that have been killed or disappeared, in 6 years, it's between 11 and 20, the number. Of course, it's a tragedy. Of course, they are human lives that deserve to be alive. But when you take that into the picture of the whole violence that is being lived here in Mexico and all the crimes and all the victims of unfair justice system, I mean, I don't think they are specifically targeted.
Are you trying to say you have to put it into perspective? Is Esteban, is that what you're saying?
Here, at least here in Mexico, I think it does have to be put in perspective as a general flaw of justice system, and the cases that now they are bringing after 10 years or more to the Inter-American Courts of Human Rights, and they have good cases, but
let me bring in the community, Esteban.
Well, our community is picking up on this theme of how environmentalists are viewed. There's a Facebook comment here from Community Water Justice who says they're often viewed as quote-unquote terrorists. They're defined as those who intercept the potential of profitable gains for the corporation. So Vanessa, in your own community, are you viewed as a villain or a hero?
Right now, as a villain. As a villain because I'm trying to stop a big corporation from coming in. I'm trying to stop the oil refinery, but it's not just me. It has been a lot of people in Costa Rica that we see that Moín can be very profitable. It can be a tourist beach where thousands of people can come and watch leatherback turtles nesting. It can be a rise to the hotels in the community, but the community is really divided. It is easier and of course more profitable for the government to accept a big company just taking over and destroying the beach. It has been very sad, and one of the other things that I like to say is it takes time. It takes a lot of time to educate everybody. We work with school systems in Costa Rica to try to teach the kids to love nature. However, it is of course seen as an easier way to get money.
Right.
Doing this, bringing the big corporation, or even, it is very sad to say, but in the community of Moín, most of the kids want to grow up to be drug dealers, and this shocks me every day and breaks my heart because it is easy money. So that's what we're dealing. That's the kids of our community, and I believe there has to be a change where we need to educate them more so that they can see the benefits that living in this area can be.
So I want to show our audience an amazing picture. This is an Amazon activist called Nisine Miguel de Lima, and she is talking about her security issues. I'm just going to play it so you can see her. She's wearing a flak jacket, a bulletproof jacket. She's talking about her escort, the Brazilian National Force, and if they leave her, who knows what might happen. So her issue is fighting the loggers in her area. But Jorge, if you're an activist, or if you're protesting in your own community, is there something that's very different about the way protesters protest in different countries around Latin America that is actually putting them more at risk?
Pardon me, I don't understand.
Yes, is there a different level of activism in Latin America where the environmentalists are fighting in a different way? How do you see that?
I don't think so. I think that the ways or the manners that the whole activist in Latin America protest is in the same way. I think that everybody wants to manage his own territories, and that is a genuine interest. So I think that we need to resolve the problem of some kind of social movements are very related with left movements which thinks that in anti-capitalism way,
Right.
So there is a very strange fight between these kind of approaches. And definitely another issue or another problem is the drugs traffic, because maybe this kind of problem are very related with the activist movement.
Okay.
Excuse me, Femi, can I jump in? Because just to give a context of Nilselene that just appears, I met Nilselene 2 years ago and I interviewed her while she was having her bodyguards around her. Well, she has been receiving death threats. She was the leader of a settlement, and she denounced illegal logging that was going on there. So she started to be threatened by loggers, and Brazilian government gave her protection for 6 months. The protection was the federal police, and the federal police started also to be threatened by loggers. And what happened is that the Brazilian government took her out of the settlement that she was coordinating and trying to improve the life of people there. They took her out to the city of Manaus and then away. So to give her protection, what they have done is to kill her in a political way, took her away from her community. That happens with many people in Brazil. There are more than 35 people who are under death threat and with bodyguards.
Philippi, I'm just about to wrap up this part of the show. We're going to carry on and take all of you across to our post show at stream.aljazeera.com. But can I ask you just very simply, and if you could respond very quickly for me, what do you see as the solution? You are an activist, you are an environmentalist, your life is often at risk. What's the solution?
For me, Femi, it's excuse me?
It's for have you ever heard of a cliffhanger, everybody? Now we're in cliffhanger territory. We will come back for that response in our post show at stream.aljazeera.com. But right now, here's Malika with some of the other stories we're following in our community.
Our first lead's out of Spain, where citizens are locking horns over a bullfighting bill. Spaniards took to the streets of Zaragoza Tuesday, protesting against a government ruling to protect what it called a traditional and cultural pastime. David tweets his support for the bill, saying, "For me, I've always liked bullfighting. Art, tradition, Spain." Many online disagreed, arguing that bullfighting is torture and not Spanish culture. Lawmakers also shot down a proposal to prevent bullfighting from being aired from 6 to 10 p.m. when children could be watching. Patricia tweets, "Bullfighting is a bad example for the kids. You're teaching them to not respect the lives of animals." Next, visually impaired Arabic speakers are asking Apple Corporation for help, as many are regretting their decision to update their iPhones to the latest software. Walid Bashir, a blind iPhone owner, uploaded a video with interviews from users who are having difficulties understanding the phone's new voiceover features. Users say the voice adds syllables to words and occasionally speaks entire sentences as though they were one word. They're asking Apple to fix it. And finally, we head to Azerbaijan, where an election app has jumped the gun by releasing so-called poll results a day ahead of the vote. The app, released by the Central Election Commission, shows incumbent leader Ilham Aliyev taking the majority of votes. Well, many took this news as proof that the election is rigged. Sarah tweets, "Haven't been able to follow the vote today, but pretty sure I know the outcome. And anyway, I hear there's an app for that." Well, did you vote in the election? We want to know. So tell us using hashtag AJStream. Femi?
I left our audience with a cliffhanger.
You did.
If you're watching on TV, now you need to go to your laptop. Address for the post show is stream.aljazeera.com. I do love the Arabic voicemail story though with iPhone, because it occasionally translates entire sentences
into one word.
I speak like that the whole time. Apple, can you help me? Yes, that's a problem. So what are we going to be doing on the next show? Well, on the next AJ Stream, the debate over the first census in Bosnia since the breakup of Yugoslavia. It's a very controversial issue right now. Could it build national unity, or is it reviving old ethnic divisions? Stay with us. The post show is next at stream.aljazeera.com, and we will see you online. Thanks for watching. Hello again, this is the Stream's online post show. We've been talking about the rise in violence against green campaigners in Latin America. The guest helping us do this, Jorge Chiapas. He's the executive director of the environmental think tank Red Arana. Felipe Milanes is a political ecologist who writes about the environment, social conflicts and indigenous issues. Vanessa Lozano is from the Costa Rica Wildlife Sanctuary, and Esteban Gonzalez is from the Libertarian Movement of Mexico. So Vanessa, I want to ask you to tell us about something that's really difficult to talk about. It's a friend and a colleague called Jairo Salvador, and he was killed looking and working after turtles in Costa Rica. It seems weird for us to even mention that. Like, you're doing conservation work and you get killed doing the conservation work. Can you tell us what happened to him?
What happened to Jairo was, it is difficult to talk about. We had a couple of death threats throughout the working. When he came to work at this particular beach, I told him this beach is not like any other beach you will ever work, because here we will get shot at and followed by machetes, because this is a conflict beach. Costa Rican government has tried to maintain this area kind of a secret because of, again, as I said, of all the development that's going to come on. We did ask for police support since always. Jairo was actually, during that time, scared of going to patrol the beach, and it was actually one of the orders was that they did not go and patrol during the night. At this point, we're just doing censo, which means that we just count the turtle tracks. However, it gets frustrating, and I understand why he went out that night, because you're there trying to protect the species and trying to save as many turtle eggs as you can, and it gets
so he was out
really
patrolling late at night. What time of night was he patrolling?
It wasn't like really that late. It was 9 o'clock during the night.
And then what happened?
When he was coming back from the beach, we got the logs put in the way. This is usually the way they would stop us, and our acts during that time was that we would always put the log back in position so that the other poachers had to get out of the car and be annoying to them too. However, this time when he took the log to put it back into position, four people came out of the bushes and pulled him to the ground and tied him up. He was actually with some volunteers. He was put in the back of the truck, and they were taken to the north part of the beach. It was actually pretty clear during the whole time that they were after Jairo or myself, and that was pretty much the message, was for us to get out of the beach, to know that we do not have control of the beach, that the control comes from other parts, and other parts, I mean, during this time it was especially the drug dealers in the area.
So we've got some video of his vigil. When did you find out that your colleague, your friend, your son's friend, when did you find out that he'd been killed?
I got the first call from the girl that was with him in the car was at 3 a.m.
Okay.
At the beginning, I told her we would find Jairo because I never thought he would be killed. I thought we would find him up pretty beat up, but that was different. I got the call at 5:30, almost 6 a.m. by the local police saying that they had found Jairo dead next to the car that was taken from him.
So Vanessa, why don't you now stop what you're doing? Why do you continue? You're a single mum and you've got a little boy, and your good friend and colleague has been murdered. Why do you still go out to the beach?
I think all of our time, you cannot stop the fight just because, I don't know, Moing has a magic to it. I think we owe it ourselves to nature. I owe it to Jairo. He believed in my work. He was passionate about the same things. We always believe that we can live in peace with nature. We can be there, working and also having a benefit out of it. it becomes to the point where people need to understand.
Okay.
I eventually have to know that sometimes I will lose the war, but I think we always have to get up. If not, what's the meaning of life?
Well, Felipe, you heard Vanessa say we cannot stop the work. Now, a couple of our community members have solutions to this problem. On Twitter, Hilmar says, is there a green, quote unquote, police force in any Latin American country? A dedicated military force may help in more violent countries. And another person tweets in, what measures and how has the government, different governments, intervened to solve or help environmentalists in these areas? So, Felipe, what are governments doing? In Brazil, I know that the government has enacted legislation that makes it illegal to threaten people's lives, for instance. Are governments doing enough?
Actually, government's not doing enough. Government's doing the opposite. What the Brazilian government is doing now is going to produce more conflict in the future, and more people will be killed. This year, it completes 25 years since Chico Mendes was assassinated in '88. He was struggling for land. He was a road tapper in the Amazon, and he was assassinated by loggers. It is the exactly same thing that happened 2 years ago with Zé Cláudio and Maria, and with Dinho, and many names that I can mention to you. What is the government doing? It's building dams in the Amazon, huge mega dams that brings more conflict. It's the Brazilian Congress is controlled by ranchers who are selling soybeans all over the world, who are going to Washington, D.C., Cátia Abreu, the Brazilian chief of Senate, to sell soybeans, and these soybeans are produced with blood of the Guaranese Indians. So the economy of the extractivism in Latin America is producing conflicts, is producing violence, and it's not some small law, or giving a military power to protect and to produce a counter-conflict to try to protect some leaders that will end the problem. What is going on there is that more conflict will come out in the future without the demarcation of lands, with a new forest code or mining code that authorized big infrastructure projects all over the countryside where the traditional people are living and wants to keep living in their territory.
So Felipe, I'm hearing the activism. Of course I'm hearing the activism from you. This is what you do professionally. But if more people who are activists are dying in Latin America than anywhere else, how do you stop the violence?
It's important to say I'm a researcher, and I integrate an European project called European Network of Political Ecology. So I'm not now in Brazil, but I'm researching what's going on there. Why I'm doing that, and that's a form of activism, because I want to understand the reasons of the conflicts and to inform the public opinion and the authorities so they can act. That's a very powerful form of activism, to understand and to denounce internationally, because government in Brazil and in many places in Latin America, they only act when they're under pressure. That's what happened with the murder of Zé Cláudio and Maria. After it got international attention, the police was sent to jail the killers.
Okay. Okay, so let me share the conversation around. Esteban, go ahead.
Yeah, could I take on that Twitter comment about a green army or a green police force or something? You can join last Wednesday on the stream program about self-defense at the local level, and I do believe as armed citizens and armed communities being as the best way to fight against these not drug dealers but organized crime that logs illegally or spread violence. But I would be terrified and I would be completely against a green police or a green army, because what I've been trying to say is that this environmentalist claim is one side of some interest related to some natural resource, and there's also always other side of it. And I think that the only way to escape this violence there's always going to be conflict, because that's how societies with scarce resources are, and the only way to canalize this conflict the best way we can is through proper education of property rights and the proper justice system that acknowledges this. And I mean, that's a fight for human rights and for everything, not for an environmentalist case. And it would be as authoritarian to have an army that defends forests and doesn't allow anybody that wants to cut them, as somebody that puts the forest and uses it to allow somebody to cut it. So I think that all the conflicts in community, even the case with the turtles, we recognize that there was a tension. Some are against, some are supporters, and we cannot call the other names or assume they are bad. We are all humans with scared means to achieve our ends, and we can only respect that.
All right, so Esteban Gonzalez, Jorge Chapas, Felipe Milanes and Vanessa Lozano, thank you very much for being part of this conversation. What's the community saying, Malika?
A nice little wrap up here from Salvatore on Twitter, who says environmental crimes must be recognized and sanctioned internationally. And I'll add one from DJ, who says when environmentalists are killed, then the environment suffers.
Now, normally I give you the last word, but there is an activist, an anti-forestation activist in the Amazon, or there was, called Zé Claudio.
Right.
He had an amazing TEDx talk. His TEDx talk, you've probably seen it, you probably didn't realize who he was. I'm going to play you a little bit of this because it's so poignant, because he kind of predicts his own demise. So this is Zé Claudio in his TEDx talk. Have a listen.
Data de hoje. Em 97 foi criado no município de Nova Ipixuna o primeiro PAI, Projeto de Assentamento Extrativista, Praia Alta Piranheira. A gente tinha uma cobertura vegetal de 85% de floresta nativa, onde concentrava castanha e cupuaçu. Hoje, com a chegada das madeireiras, das gozeiras que chegaram para Marabá, hoje resta pouco mais de 20% dessa cobertura já fragmentada em muitos lugares. É um desastre para quem vive do extrativismo como eu, que sou castanheiro desde os 7 anos de idade, vivo da floresta, protejo ela de todo jeito. Por isso eu vivo com a bala na cabeça a qualquer hora.
So that's Zé Claudio. 6 months after he did that TEDx talk, he was murdered in his own community. Gives you an idea of how much work there still has to be done in Latin America with the environmentalists and the activism, and working together as a community. This conversation will continue online, #AJStream, or other ways, Malika?
At AJStream, Google Plus or Facebook.
So many ways to get in touch with us. Keep that conversation going. Meanwhile, we're moving on the next show, the debate over the first census in Bosnia since the breakup of Yugoslavia. Now, could it build national unity, or is it reviving old ethnic divisions? Good question, but good question for another day. Thanks for watching. Take care.